Pot of Greed is a normal spell that allows you to draw 2 cards. That's it. That's all it does. So why did it get banned? Well, here's the thing. In Yu-Gi-Oh, the only resources are the cards in your hand, and Pot of Greed's ability to give you 2 new resources for completely free was incredibly powerful. And think about what you were drawing into. Cards like Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, Snatch Steal, Heavy Storm, Raigeki, all cards that can completely turn the game around all by themselves. Games would just evolve into who drew more power spells, and Pot of Greed was not only one of them, it potentially got you more of them. This card was banned in 2005 and has stayed there ever since. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
Yu-Gi-Oh has progressed to a point where basically every card is a power spell. Imagine you spend 2 to 3 hand traps to try and stop your opponent's plays, and then they just drop Pot of Greed and go full combo anyway. Yeah, that was just a bad example. Instead, think about how Pot of Greed just straight up makes every single hand better for having it. It just gets you 2 more cards, and when every card in your deck is good and worth drawing, it will always provide value. And not because it's a +1, it's because the cards it draws you will plus you even more or disrupt your opponent from plussing themselves. The card would only serve to make games feel more swingy and benefits going first far more than anything else, which we do not need any more of. Forceful Sentry and Confiscation let you look at your opponent's hand, then rip a card out, and Delinquent Duo rips 1 card at random and one of the opponent's choice. So why did they get banned? Simple. Ripping 2 cards out of your opponent's hand is a broken effect. Confiscation and Forceful Sentry's ability to provide full hand knowledge on your opponent was incredible, because not only could you just take away their best card, you knew exactly what else they had and how to play around it. Delinquent Duo was bad too, because it just straight up traded 2 for 1 for basically nothing. It got so bad that players would set very important cards like Dark Hole or Raigeki, allowing them to be destroyed by any removal card, just so they wouldn't get ripped by one of these cards. In 2006, all 3 of these cards were banned and have stayed there ever since. Could these cards come back?
Hell no!
If a card like a Pointer of the Red Lotus, which is strictly worse than all 3 of these cards, is currently banned, then there's no chance any of these could ever come off. Going first is already strong, but being able to rip hand traps out of your opponent's hand is just infuriating. Baron de Fleur is a level 10 synchro monster with generic materials and 3 effects, and can pop any card on field, return itself to the extra deck during the standby phase to reborn a level 9 or lower monster, and also it has an Omni Negate. So why did it get banned? Simple. Baron was too strong for how generic it is. Granted, Baron wasn't banned because its own effects were too strong, more so the fact that it was so easily comboed with other generic negates to create unbreakable boards. Decks like Super Heavy Samurai, Manadium, and more recently Snake Eyes would flood their field with generic negate cards that stop your opponent from playing. Could this card come back? No. Aside from the aforementioned reasoning, Baron also caused every synchro deck to feel the same. You always ended on Baron, Borreload, and maybe your own boss monster if you opened well enough. It was unreasonable to compare other synchros to Baron, and as such, made them all obsolete. Fiber Jar is a flip monster that, when flipped, shuffles all cards from the hand, field, and graveyard into the deck, then draws both players 5 cards, effectively soft restarting the game. So why did it get banned? Fiber Jar saw lots of play in stall strategies as arguably the best stall card of its era. It really didn't contribute to any win condition or anything for that matter, and only caused tournaments to slow down, and it was for this reason it was banned back in April 2005. Could this card come back? Yeah, but it really shouldn't. Being a flip effect makes it very clunky in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! And would likely never actually resolve without some sort of 3-card combo, but the fact that a card's sole purpose is to drag out games wouldn't be very healthy for the game or tournaments. Imperial Order was a continuous trap that, for the cost of 700 life points during each of your standby phases, prevented both players from using spell cards. Also, you could, at any point, choose not to pay the 700 life and destroy the card when you wanted to use spells. So why did it get banned? When Imperial Order was released, spell cards were by far the strongest card type in the game, and being able to lock your opponent out of using them was more than enough to ban this card. It was just an insult to injury the fact that you could turn it off whenever you wanted to. Your opponent tried blowing up your field with Raigeki, flip up Io, and problem solved. Oh, but don't worry, you can turn it off to Raigeki your opponent's field on your turn. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
This is, without question, the strongest floodgate to ever hit Yu-Gi-Oh! While other floodgates might have higher highs like Summon Limit or these guys, Io hits everything just enough to matter. Except for like Super Heavy and Lab. Pretend I didn't show the one Super Heavy Samurai monster that does lose to Io. Surely they wouldn't test this card again. I mean, it's clearly too strong, right? Wait, didn't I just cover this card? Oh, it got Narada. Oh, okay, cool. What does it do? Okay, you can't turn it off anymore. All right, that's good, I guess. And you pay during both standby phases. Okay, anything else? Oh, that's it. What the fuck? So why did it get banned? I mean, they definitely made the card worse now, since you actually have to play under the restrictions of your own Floodgate, but it's still Imperial Order. It still shuts off a third of the cards in the game, and it also can just be activated after you set up your entire combo going first, which has little to no repercussions for the user. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
Imperial Order is currently the only card to ever be banned after receiving an errata to get it unbanned. So I think that alone should stand as a testament to how strong this is. Yeah, man, this card is insane. Beatrice is a generic rank 6 requiring 2 6s and has the relevant effect to send any card from your deck to the graveyard on a quick effect. So why did it get banned? Beatrice has been a problem card for a long time. Dumping any card from your deck is a pretty powerful effect, especially on an extra deck monster, and a generic one at that. This card was responsible for all sorts of war crimes, from more tame setups of sending tier cards, to sending transaction rollback and the Mayakashi trap to prevent your opponent from a special summon for the turn, to dumping Snake Eye Ash to turn itself into full Snake Eye combo. Honestly, the only reason it was legal for so long was because rank 6s were just really hard to make. I mean, it took a generic meta rank 6 engine to finally get this card banned. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
Beatrice was made during an era where Konami thought it would be a fun idea to print insane cards like this but make them really hard to summon. And guess what? All those cards have since gained ways to cheat them out and use their powerful effects in ways they were never intended to. Beatrice was just simply designed poorly and was not future-proofed in the slightest. Ultimate Offering is a continuous trap that, during either your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, you can pay 500 life points to normal summon a monster. Notably, this card is not once per turn at all. So why did this card get banned? Ultimate Offering lets you normal summon as many times as you want. So if you were to normal summon a monster that searches a monster on normal summon, that also searches a monster on normal summon, you can see how this card could get out of hand. This card was banned in 2013 for its synergy with the Gadgets, which were a series of monsters that search each other on normal summon. Could this card come back? Yeah, actually. I might have made this card sound crazy, but the fact that it's a trap card really holds it back. For a trap card to be viable in today's Yu-Gi-Oh, it must either be a very powerful, searchable form of interruption, get you an insane amount of advantage by itself, or be a Floodgate. Ultimate Offering can get you an insane amount of advantage, but you also need to draw the cards you want to normal summon. On top of that, if you want to use it on the opponent's turn, you can only summon during the battle phase, which is too late most of the time, which just leaves you waiting until your second turn before being able to use it. This card is just too slow for modern Yu-Gi-Oh and could definitely come back. These cards have a lot of text on them, but all you need to know is that they can copy the effect of a monster in your graveyard. Also, neither of them are hard ones per turns. So why'd they get banned? FTKs, baby! These cards were used in various decks that intended to have them copy the effect of Lyrilisk Independent Nightingale, then burn the opponent for game. Nightingale is a soft once per turn effect that deals burn damage equal to its level times 500, which normally isn't a problem since it's a level 1, but now when a level 8 or 10 monster is burning you, it hits much harder. Also, copying Nightingale's effect makes them unaffected by card effects, so you can't even negate them. Could these cards come back?
Hell no!
Cards that can generically copy effects are incredibly dangerous. Even if they couldn't FTK with burn effects, they'd still be usable at all sorts of unfun nonsense. Even today, people are tinkering with Phantom of Chaos to copy Sky Scourge nor Laris to fully hand loop your opponent. Cards have restrictions on them for a reason, and throwing those effects onto monsters with no such limitation is just way too powerful. All you need to know about this guy is that if he is synchro summoned, he stops your opponent from activating cards on the field for the rest of the turn. So why did this card get banned? It's a really powerful Floodgate. The only reason this card stuck around for so long was because there wasn't a consistent way to summon him on the opponent's turn. That was until the release of both the Centurion archetype as well as Crimson Dragon. Centurion is a deck that makes level 12 synchros, and Crimson Dragon is a level 12 synchro that can cheat out any dragon synchro monster. And wouldn't you know, it can cheat out King Calamity on the opponent's turn with shocking consistency. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
Now, Centurion was never a meta deck, but the fact that they could consistently bring out a turn skip Floodgate was not healthy. As Yu-Gi-Oh progresses and makes old cards like this easier to summon, we need to stop and ban some of the cards that break. King Calamity was never intended to be summoned this way, and rather than hitting Crimson Dragon, which is just a cool card, Konami decided to ban the Floodgate monster. Magical Scientist is a monster that, for the low cost of 1000 life points, lets you cheat out a level 6 or lower fusion monster. Not once per turn, by the way. So why did it get banned? Magical Scientist was used in Yu-Gi-Oh's first widely known FTK, or first turn kill. In it, you would have Magical Scientist summon a whole bunch of monsters that would then be tributed by Catapult Turtle to burn your opponent for game. That's really all he was ever used for before getting banned in April of 2005. Could this card come back?
No.
It should come to no one's surprise that summoning a whole bunch of monsters for basically free is a powerful effect. It's so powerful I didn't even mention the downside to it, and that the fusion monsters are returned to the extra deck during the end phase. It's widely considered that this is one of the most powerful cards ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh!, up there with the likes of Pre-Errata Chaos Emperor Dragon, Painful Choice, and Soul Charge. If allowed today, it would spawn even more FTKs than Firewall Dragon in his prime. No, this card could never return.
Butterfly Dagger Elma is an equipped spell that gives the equipped monster 300 attack, and if it's destroyed while equipped to a monster, you can add it back to your hand, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? Butterfly Dagger Elma was responsible for quite possibly the worst FTK known to man. It involved having both Royal Magical Library, which gained a spell counter each time a spell is activated and could remove 3 to draw a card, and Gearfried the Iron Knight, which destroyed any equipped spell equipped to it. You would then infinitely equip Butterfly Dagger Elma to Gearfried, which would in turn generate infinite counters on Royal Magical Library, which would allow you to draw your entire deck, at which point you could win in a multitude of ways. Could this card come back?
Yes.
This is quite possibly the worst card to still be on the ban list. This FTK was terrible back in 2005. Requiring 2 unsearchable normal summonable monsters was a recipe for disaster, and would be even worse in 2024. Maybe some deck could make use of an infinitely activatable spell, but I doubt that deck would be worth considering.
Branded Expulsion is a trap card that can tribute a fusion monster to summon 2 monsters from your grave or banishment, 1 to your field and 1 to the opponent's. So why did it get banned? Being able to summon any monster to your opponent's field is very dangerous. There are many monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! That place restrictions on the player who controls them. Some are intentional, but many are not. One such monster was Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, which, when special summoned, prevents you from summoning non-Gimmick Puppet monsters, and since you're giving it to the opponent, you effectively lock them out of special summoning for the turn. This was also very consistent and very easy to pull off. Could this card come back?
No.
There's a reason why cards like this are very rare. It's because being able to give the opponent anything is just way too powerful. Just ban Sanctifier and be done with it already, man. Heavy Storm is a spell card that destroys all spells and traps on the field. So why did it get banned? Heavy Storm was a format warping card. Back when every deck was slow and played back row, Heavy Storm was required to disincentivize players from just setting 5 and passing. However, as the game sped up, trap cards needed to either be played in very high quantities or not at all, since they often needed to commit more cards to actually stop their opponent. It left them wide open to being completely destroyed by Heavy Storm, and it was for this reason it got banned. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Personally, I don't want Heavy Storm to come back. I feel that back row hate is already strong enough as is with stuff like Cosmic Cyclone, Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, and even Twin Twister. I don't see why we would want more blowout cards against trap decks. That being said, this card recently came back to one in both the OCG and Master Duel, so it's very likely it will come back in the TCG as well. Also, the fact it can destroy your own cards is cute in decks like Unchained, but is hardly the reason this card is still banned. All you need to know about these cards is that they can all make tokens essentially for free. So why are they banned? Link monsters. That's it. Love them or hate them, Link monsters are a very pivotal part of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And they are the most generic extra deck type, in some cases only requiring 2+ monsters. These cards are responsible for many absurd Link boards and are partially what contributed to the community's negative perception of Links in general, alongside the abomination that was Master Rule 4. Could these cards come back?
No.
You just simply can't summon tokens without a restriction in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Mass token generation was so powerful, people even played Scapegoat, which locks you out of summoning for the entire turn because tokens were so powerful. With the amount of powerful link climbing tools we have now, I shudder at the thought of being able to start your combo with a Gofu. Utopic Sexel is a rank 1 Xyz monster that requires 3 number Xyz monsters with the same rank as material. Then, on the opponent's turn, you can detach a material to prevent them from activating cards or effects for the turn. Fun. So why did it get banned? At release, this card was nothing more than a fun gimmick. A boss monster with an overpowered effect, but with an equally insane summoning condition. That was until the release of the Numeron archetype. Anyone who's played Master Duel should be familiar with this deck, but all you need to know is it's able to easily cheat out 4 number Xyz monsters, all with the same rank. You can see where the problem comes in. Could this card come back?
No.
This card is similar to Rongo Miniad, an absurdly powerful floodgate, sure, but it's really hard to summon, though not out of the question. Even if this card came back without Numeron, there are definitely still decks that could easily turbo this card out. Yeah, I just neglected to mention the fact that you can also rank this up on top of any Utopia by discarding a rank up magic. It wasn't super relevant for how it got banned, but you know, another reason as to why this card can definitely not come back, because they're still making Utopia support. Galaxy Tomahawk is a rank 7 Xyz monster that requires 2 level 7s as material, and it can attach 2 materials to summon as many tokens as possible. So why did it get banned? Any card that says summon as many monsters as possible is just asking to get broken, and Tomahawk was no exception. Being a rank 7 meant that there really wasn't a good way to summon it, that is until the release of the Danger monsters. Nessie and Dogman are both 7s, so getting this guy onto the board all of a sudden became much easier. This card soon became a part of the Danger Dark World FTK. The deck would use Tomahawk to set up a board that could infinitely summon Grapha and tribute it with Cannon Soldier to burn the opponent for game. Could this card come back?
No.
While yes, this card is legal in both the OCG and Master Duel and sees very little play, this is primarily because the best rank 7 deck, Kashtira, is severely crippled in both those formats. In the TCG, where Kashtira is at full power, this card would be utterly insane. They have played Dracosack as sort of a Tomahawk light, so they definitely don't need the real thing. Mass Driver is a continuous spell that can tribute a monster to deal 400 damage to the opponent. opponent, not once per turn. So why did it get banned?
FTKs, yeah!
Not only was this responsible for the most consistent FTK in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, it is also currently the only FTK to ever win Worlds! It was called the Frog FTK, which involved using Substitute and Swap Frog to send an insane amount of frogs to the graveyard. With enough frogs in grave, you could continuously summon Ronin Totem, tribute him for Mass Driver, then do it again until the opponent ran out of life points. Could this card come back?
No.
Mass Driver is a card that could only be used for degenerate strategies. While summoning 20 monsters in one turn is difficult, it's not impossible, as seen with the Frog FTK. We've seen similar FTKs pop up more recently in 2018 with the Danger Dark World FTK, only they used Cannon Soldier. And I don't say this very often, but the OCG actually had the right idea here, what with banning Amazon's Archer and the Cannon Soldiers. Still crazy that those cards are legal. Last Will is a normal spell that, if a monster was sent from your field to your graveyard at some point during the turn, you can special summon any monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. Only once, thank God. So why did it get banned? This card was released in the TCG's second ever product, the Yugi Structure Deck, and this card was great shortly after release when you were only summoning recruiters off of it. But it wouldn't be long before you could summon Magical Scientists from your deck for free. Then, a few years later, you could summon Cyber Sign or Rescue Cat, meaning that at any point, your opponent could just activate Last Will and OTK you out of nowhere. It was a broken card that worked very well with other broken cards. Could this card come back?
No.
This might be the hardest no yet. Last Will can summon any monster with 1500 or less attack, and I mean anything. This thing is E-tally for pretty much any starter in the game. For example, it can summon any of the small Snake Eye monsters, Chundra, Genroku, and pretty much every Yubel monster. Snow is a level 4 light spellcaster that can banish 7 cards from your hand, field, and or graveyard to summon itself from grave. This is a quick effect and not once per turn. Also, on summon, it sets an opponent's monster face down. So why did it get banned? Snow is actually banned twice. The first time was in 2019 because of Thunder Dragons. They had many ways to send a large amount of cards to the graveyard, and on top of that, they all have effects that trigger when banished. Snow is able to act not only as an interruption, but also get you an insane amount of advantage by banishing Thunder Dragons. Snow was later brought back in 2022, but was banned only 8 months later. This was because of its synergy with Chaos Ruler pile decks, as well as a little-known deck known as Tearlament. You may have heard of it. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Snow is unlimited in both the OCG and Master Duel. It is very powerful in those formats, but it isn't breaking the game by any means. It's not even that mill decks are bad, since decks like Horus, Tyr, and Grass do exist. My theory as to why this is because summoning Snow multiple times is actually pretty difficult, meaning she really isn't able to be abused too much. Still a scary card, but I could see it coming back at some point. Chaos Ruler is a level 8 Dark Dragon Synchro with generic materials. On Synchro Summon, it excavates 5 cards, adds 1 light or dark monster among them, then mills the rest. Also, it can summon itself from the graveyard by banishing a light and dark monster from grave. So why did it get banned? A generic 8 that effectively draws 1 and mills 4? That's insane! This guy was a very powerful starter for many Wombo combo decks that wanted lots of cards in the graveyard. Though, what really pushed it over the edge was its synergy with Punks. Off a single E-tally plus a discard, you could Chaos Ruler to mill 5, then overlay it with a level 8 Punk to make Zombie Vampire and mill 4 more, basically milling 9 off a single card. You'll never guess which deck made great use of this combo. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Chaos Ruler does way too much for how easy it is to summon. Graveyard-focused decks have only gotten better since its ban, and any deck that could make it would. From Dragon Link to Horus to Lightsworn, these decks would absolutely kill for a mill 5 that can also be linked off twice. Union Carrier is a link 2 that requires 2 monsters with the same type or attribute as materials. It can target a monster you control, then equip a monster from your hand or deck to it with a matching type or attribute. So why did it get banned? Union Carrier was very clearly intended to be able to equip Union monsters from the deck, what with the name and the reference to Union Hanger, but this thing was responsible for one thing and one thing only, the Buster Lock. Basically, you would set up your board like normal, making sure to summon Borreload Savage Dragon, a common end board piece at the time. You would then link off for Union Carrier to equip Savage with Buster Dragon Destruction Sword. While it's equipped to a monster your opponent can't summon from the extra deck. So now your opponent has to play through your board without their extra deck. Fun. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
While Savage Dragon is now banned, it isn't hard to get a dragon and or dark monster on your end board. And even if Dragon Buster was banned, Union Carrier is still basically Foolish Burial on a semi-generic link 2. Just link off whatever you equip and boom. Kitkalos is a fusion monster that requires both a Tearlament and an Aqua monster as material. On summon, she adds or dumps a tier card, can send a card you control to the grave to special a tier monster from hand or grave, and if she's sent to grave by a card effect, mills 5. So why did it get banned? Tier was the most powerful tier 0 deck we have ever seen, and it's not very close. And one of the main reasons this deck was so good was because of Kitkalos. With only the first part of her first effect, you could add Sheeran or Rhino for extension, Sulliker Havness for interruption, or Merlead combine with her second effect and mill 8. Not to mention you could also dump any name for a free summon of Rulkalos. That's just the first effect, and there's already an insane amount of options, so hopefully this gets the point across of how busted she was. She was banned alongside the limitation of not only the 3 tier limit girls, but the Ishizu cards as well. Could this card come back?
No.
Tier has still topped events in the wake of Kikkolos's ban. The deck is very much still playable, and while yes, they would love to have her back, they really don't need it. Also, we definitely don't need another Tier 0 format. Both of these cards have the same relevant effect too. If they are sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, mill 5 from both players. So why'd they get banned? These cards were part of the Tier 0 Ishizu tier limit deck. They synergize incredibly well with the tier cards that not only have great ways of milling themselves, but also all have graveyard effects. If you manage to mill Yugioh and or Kelbeck, the board would likely look like this. Another fun part about these cards is that they milled your opponent too. Sure hope you didn't need any of your cards to stay in the deck, cause it wasn't unlikely to have 10 cards milled off your deck before your turn even started. Also, the fact that they were 4s that could theoretically summon themselves meant that they could also be half of an Abyss Dweller or a Baguska. Could these cards come back?
Hell no.
Tier is still very much around and is doing completely fine without them. Not to mention other mill decks have entered the format since, like Lightsworn and Horus. These cards should also just stay banned because of how annoying it is to have your deck milled against your will. Self-Destruct button is a normal trap that can only be activated while your opponent has 7,000 more life points than you, and all it does is make both players' life points 0, forcing a draw. So why did it get banned? It might be confusing why a card that only causes draws is banned, but it comes down to how tournaments are run. At official tournaments, you had 40 minutes to complete your best 2 of 3 match. If time ran out before this and no player was ahead, each player would get 2 turns to attempt to win. If the game isn't over by then, whoever had more life points would win. Basically, you would play a deck that's sole purpose was to lower your life points to 1,000 or less just to activate Self-Destruct button for 40 minutes straight. Once time was called, you would side in a bunch of life point gain and or burn cards and just stall for 2 turns. This strategy was by no means meta, but it was disruptive enough to get Self-Destruct button banned. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Time rules have actually changed to benefit Self-Destruct button. Rounds do last 45 minutes now, but instead of each player getting 2 turns to win, the game ends at the end of the current phase. This means you can get cheese in time way easier, making Self-Destruct button stalling even more obnoxious. Time rules have actually changed again. Now rounds are 50 minutes, and if neither player finishes their match in that time, both players lose the round. This now makes Self-Destruct button completely useless if your goal is to win, since you'll never actually win a game. Cards should still be banned because it's annoying though. Victory Dragon is a dark dragon with 2400 attack. It cannot be special summoned and needs 3 dragon monsters for its tribute summon. However, if this monster wins the game with a direct attack, you win the match. Not the duel, the match. So why did it get banned? For those unaware, in a competitive setting, Yu-Gi-Oh is played in a best of 3 format. So if this card wins game 1, you wouldn't play games 2 or 3. This is obviously unfair, as it's not that hard to win game 1 when using a gimmicky deck like Victory Dragon. It would summon a whole bunch of monsters while DNA surgery is on the field to make them all dragons, then attack the opponent for the match. Now, everything I said was true, except for the fact that in the TCG, this was never happening. In the TCG, you are allowed to forfeit whenever you want, so when your opponent declares an attack with Victory Dragon, you can just concede and you'll only lose the duel, not the match. This caused uproars at enough tournaments and confused enough judges to get the card banned. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This card would suck, but there would definitely still be players who would try and force it, then get upset when the opponent scoops before they swing for game. It promotes unsportsmanlike behavior and as such, should stay banned. Electromite is a Link 2 monster requiring any 2 pendulum monsters as material, and on summon, places a pen monster in your extra deck face up. It can also destroy a card you control to add a face up pen monster from your extra deck to your hand, and when one of your cards is destroyed, you can draw 1. So why did it get banned? Electromite was created to help Pendulum transition into Master Rule 4, and wow, this card just does everything. It sets up your extra deck, effectively searches for any pen card, and also draws. There wasn't a specific combo that broke this card, but it was so powerful that every pen deck morphed into Electromite Turbo. It was so common and so over-centralizing for the mechanic that it was eventually banned in 2020. Endymion and Pen Magician were also powerful decks at the time, so it was also a hit to those decks in specific. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Regardless of your opinions of Pendulum as a mechanic, they are severely underpowered in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Even with newer cards like Beyond and Exceed the Pendulum existing, they struggle to play in the current format. Electromite is also completely legal in both the OCG and Master Duel, and Pen is still doing nothing there. Pen players have dealt with enough, so we can let them have this one card. Verte is a generic Link 2 that can pay 2,000 life points to dump any fusion spell to copy and apply its effect. Then it locks you out of summoning for the rest of the turn. So why did it get banned? Verte was most often used to summon Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, or later on Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. It was mostly relegated to being the best thing you can do with leftover bodies, or I just got hit with 3 hand traps and Verte is my only play. Verte was a fine part of the meta, but was by no means broken, until players discovered a very simple combo that would have Artifact Dagdas to Artifact Scythe, then have Verte summon DPE to pop the Scythe on the opponent's turn and lock them out of their extra deck. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Verte is no doubt a strong card, but with Scythe now banned, this card gets much worse. First off, it takes a minimum of 2 extra deck slots as well as 2 to 3 Garnets in the main deck. You also need to use one of the 3 good fusion spells for Verte to copy, meaning the only decks that would play Verte would be fusion decks, which Verte was designed to support. Verte's niche now also has competition from SP Little Knight and Still Hat Rabbit, they basically serve the same role as Verte but with way fewer garnets. LB is a Link 1 dragon and Agripane is a Link 2, both requiring 1 to 2 dragons as their respective materials. They both have the effect of summoning a dragon to a zone 2 or more Link monsters point to. LP summons from deck and Agripane from extra deck. So why did they get banned? These cards were responsible for the first iteration of a deck we would come to know as Dragon Link, a deck that pretty much plays every good dragon card in existence. These two were responsible for so many degenerate combos and endboards that I can't possibly list them all. But the primary suspects were Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss off of Agripane as an Omni Negate, and Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon off of LP, who at this point had a soft once per turn effect to reborn a dragon monster. They helped contribute to the impossible to break boards that 2018 was known for. Could these cards come back?
Hell no!
These cards have only gotten better over time. Agripane can still summon Hot Red, but now also could summon Dispatter, Borland, or even Crimson Dragon for free. LP also has brand new targets such as any Rocket, Bestial, or even still DMD. Premature Burial is an equip spell that pays 800 life points to summon a monster from the grave and equip itself to it. And if either the monster or pre-mat are specifically destroyed, they both get destroyed. Not once per turn, by the way. So why did it get banned? This card was released very early on into Yu-Gi-Oh! A time when resurrection effects were at a premium. They represented a way to get big monsters onto the board for free. This card is a staple in GOAT format for this very reason, alongside Call of the Haunted as the premier revival cards. However, unlike Call of the Haunted, pre-mat has to specifically be destroyed to also blow up the equipped monster. This means that bouncing the card back to your hand allows you to reactivate the spell without destroying the equipped monster. This led to some crazy combos that obviously weren't intended, so the card was eventually banned in 2008. Could this card come back? No. This card would likely only be played in Infernoble Knights, Makonko, and not much else. I think this card should stay banned, but I will say that my opinion has softened quite a bit since Izolde's ban. Fishborg Blaster is a level 1 water fish tuner that for the discard of a water monster can be special summoned from the grave as long as you control a level 3 or lower water monster, not once per turn. The only restriction on this guy is that he can only be used as synchro material if the other materials are all water. So why did it get banned? This card was one of the best combo enablers for its time. This card saw lots of play alongside the frog monsters to spam out lots of powerful synchros. It was played in Frog OTK as the primary enabler for said OTK, and later as an additional mode for Frog Monarch decks to let them OTK out of nowhere. They would use Blaster alongside another level 1 like Treeborn Frog to make Formula Synchro and a synchro climb up into big boss monsters like Colossal Fighter and Shooting Star Dragon. This became a bit too consistent and powerful, so the card was banned in 2011. Could this card come back? No. Obviously this card is busted with Link monsters. You could guess that by just reading the card. But the main reason is that this card would absolutely break Mermail Atlantean. The deck's gimmick is that their monsters trigger when they are discarded for a water monster's effect. Blaster provides them with not only infinite Link material, but infinite discard fodder too. Ronin Totem is a level 2 aqua that can banish a frog from grave to reborn itself, not once per turn. Only restriction is that it cannot be used as synchro material. So why did it get banned? This card was the third piece of the frog FTK. You specifically would send frogs to grave to fuel Ronin Totem's continuous resurrections. However, despite both Substitute and Mass Driver's ban, Ronin Totem managed to avoid it. It continued to be a powerful rank 2 enabler in rank 2 decks like Paleo for many years, but the deck to finally break it was Sprite. Sprite is a deck that revolves around level, rank, and Link 2s, and was very powerful. The frogs were played as a supplementary engine that acted as extra Link material as well as a way to make totally awesome. Ronin alongside Swap Frog gave Sprite several extra bodies to not only start their plays, but to extend into huge endboards, which led to Ronin's ban. Could this card come back? No. Ronin's old partner in crime, Substitute, has since been unbanned. Both those cards are individually busted and should never be legal at the same time again. And I'd argue that Ronin would do so much more bad for the game than Substitute has since coming back. Azathoth is a generic rank 5 Xyz requiring 3 level 5s. It can also be ranked up on top of an outer entity Xyz monster, so Nyarla. It has the relevant effect that, on summon, stops your opponent from activating monster effects for the turn. So why did it get banned? It's a really powerful floodgate. Azathoth was first used in degenerate combo decks as a way to stop your opponent from hand trapping you. You would just overlay it on top of Nyarla, which is generic rank 4, and boom, no more hand traps. But what really broke this card was the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. The combo was to have Rusty set the Phantom Knights rank up magic launch, which on the opponent's turn would be used on a Time Thief Redoer with no materials to summon Azathoth on the opponent's turn, stopping them from using any monster effect for the entire turn. Fun. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
For whatever reason, Konami decided to ban both Rusty and the PK rank up spell to try and keep Azathoth legal in the past, to no avail. This card is completely absurd because there is zero counterplay once it hits the board. Tempest Magician is a level 6 synchro monster requiring a spellcaster non-tuner. On summon, she places a spell counter on herself, can discard cards from your hand to play spell counters equal to the amount discarded, then finally she can remove all spell counters on the field to burn the opponent for 500 per spell counter. So why did it get banned? FTKs, yeah! This card was responsible for some shockingly consistent FTKs. However, on release, this wasn't the case. Spell counters as a mechanic were so underpowered that the thought of getting the 16 counters necessary to FTK was completely unreasonable. That was until the release of the Endymion retrains and subsequent archetype. Now, there exists a deck that accrued far more than 16 spell counters through its basic combo and could easily facilitate Tempest Magician. Overnight, the FTKs it enabled went from a 10% success rate to about a 95% success rate. Could this card come back?
Hell Hell no.
This card serves no purpose aside from FTKs, and if Konami ever wants to print more cards that use spell counters, they'd have to think about this card too. Prank Kids Miyamu is a Link 1 requiring a level 4 or lower Prank Kids monster as material, and during your opponent's turn, if a Prank Kids monster would tribute itself to activate its effect, you can banish itself from the grave instead. So why did it get banned? Miyamu's effect was pretty much irrelevant to its success. It was just a Link 1 that had Prank Kids in the name. All the Prank Kids main deck monsters have effects that trigger when they are using materials for the fusion or link summon of a Prank Kids monster. In addition to this, they synergize very well with the new adventure engine, which gave them access to an Omni Negate for basically free. The deck was very powerful and got Miyamu banned to basically cycle it out of the format. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Miyamu is really only playable in Prank Kids, and Prank Kids, even at full power, wouldn't be a good deck in 2025. Their best case end board is pathetic by current standards. The only reason it's still banned, I assume, is because the intern in charge of the ban list forgot about it. Topologic Gumblar Dragon is a generic Link 4 requiring 2+ effect monsters, and if a monster is summoned to a zone a Link points to, you can discard up to 2 cards from your hand to force your opponent to do the same. Also, during your main phase, if this card is extra linked, which means both extra monster zones are connected by a chain of arrows, you can perform the first effect, but only your opponent discards. You can only use one of these effects per turn. So why did it get banned? The more I read this card, the more upset it makes me, because there was a definite attempt to try and balance this card. It's a Link 4 that does nothing by itself, requires you to discard as well, and you can only use one effect per turn. But at the same time, this card was released with Goki at full power. Firewall Dragon, Isolde, and the Nightmares were all used to facilitate a pseudo FTK that would U-Link, rip 2 cards on your turn, then summon to a zone a Link points to on the opponent's turn to rip 2 more. Fun. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Not much to say here. Gumblar was a horrendous design mistake that I hope Konami never tries to retread. Maxi is a monster that can be discarded on either turn to allow you to draw 1 card every time your opponent special summons. So why did it get banned? Maxi is actually a very old card released in 2011. Its initial purpose being to counter heavy combo decks by delaying them for a turn. Funny enough, this niche wasn't good enough for Maxi to see consistent play for several years. It took until around 2016 for Maxi to become a household name. Speed of the game had increased, and alongside it, the need to special summon. We entered a point where every deck needed to special summon multiple times per turn to perform any sort of combo. There became a common joke of taking the Maxi challenge, which basically meant you tried to set up a board so strong it didn't matter how many cards they had, or special summon 35+ times to make your opponent lose a deck out. Of course, both these options were very situational and very impractical. Maxi would prove to be too powerful and would eventually be banned in 2018. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Maxi is a very hotly debated card, but at least in the TCG, it's pretty safe to say this card is never coming back. Konami has released the Mulch Armies, which are just restricted Maxis, so why bother releasing the real thing? Dark Matter Dragon is a rank 9 Xyz monster requiring 3 level 9s as material, though you always use its alternative condition of ranking it up over a Galaxy as Xyz monster. On summon, it sends 3 dragons to grave for cost to make your opponent banish 3 monsters from their deck. Not once per turn, by the way. Also get Detachment Chill to attack twice. So why did it get banned? I have no clue what they were thinking when they released this card. A card that can be ranked up on top of a generic rank 8 that milled 3 dragons for cost, and it could OTK into an open board by itself. This card famously got the Dragon Rulers banned all the way back in 2015, but that's not why it got banned. It managed to stick around until 2019 when it got banned due to being an integral part of the Gandora FTK. It would dump Eclipse Wyvern, a way to banish it, usually Tempest, and another dragon. This, alongside LP and pre-router Red MD, allowed for a very consistent FTK using Gandora X. Fun. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Despite how funny it would be to resolve this card against Malice, this card could never come back under any circumstances. Dumping 3 dragons to grave for cost off of a generic rank 8 is way too powerful and way too abusable. Isolde is a Link 2 requiring 2 warrior monsters as material. On summon, it searches a warrior, though you can't summon it or use its effects this turn, and it can summon any warrior from deck by dumping equip spells equal to its level. So why did it get banned? Isolde was toxic in 2 major ways. First off, the way it was most often summoned was with Neospace Connector, which would summon Aqua Dolphin, which ripped any potential hand trap from your opponent. Second, and this is the big one, it summoned any warrior from the deck. The main targets were Infernoble Verdad or Armageddon Knight, both of which led to some insane boards. This card's rap sheet is so long I can't even begin to describe it, but here are some highlights. Obviously, Isolde is an integral part of Infernoble and its hand looping shenanigans. It saw play in Dark Warrior, which could beat you in a multitude of unfair ways, and its final crime was being part of Exodia FTK. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This is one of the most degenerate combo enablers Yugioh has ever seen, up there with the likes of Hulk and Auroradon. It blows my mind that this card is still legal in Master Duel. Diablos is a generic rank 7 requiring 2 7s as material. It has the relevant effect to detach a material to look at your opponent's extra deck and then banish a card face down. Also, if an opponent's card is banished face down, you can banish a card off the top of their deck face down equal to the amount they already have. So why did it get banned? Diablosis was released as a prize card in 2017 and saw 0 play. The average player wouldn't be able to get the card until 2021, and no one played it until 2023 with the full release of the Kashtira archetype. The Kashtira are a bunch of level 7s that love to banish cards face down, and they loved this card. Throughout the standard Kashtira combo, you banish 3 to 4 cards off your opponent's deck. Diablosis could banish 1 more to then banish 4 to 5 cards, meaning your opponent would start their turn with 1 to 2 cards out of their extra deck, 3 to 4 zones locked, and the top 8-9 cards of their deck banished face down, and they'd be under a Rise Heart. Also, the moment they triggered any Kashtira effect, they would lose another 10 cards off their deck. Fun. Could this card come back?
Hell Hell no.
As long as specifically Kashtira Rhyzart and Shangri-Ira exists, this card cannot come back. It would lead to a deck that's sole purpose is to pseudo FDK you by not letting you play at all. A Rhyzart is a generic rank 7 requiring 3 7s as material, though it can also be ranked up over any Kashtira monster providing Shangri-Ira's effect was used successfully. Here I misspoke. Shangri-Ira's effect doesn't actually have to be successful, it just has to be activated. So as long as the activation wasn't negated, you can still rank up a Rhyzart. Its effects include attaching a banished card to itself anytime a card is banished, not once per turn, and is also mandatory, and you can detach 3 materials to banish a card on field face down. Oh, and it's also Macrocosmos. So why did it get banned? A Rhyzart was a game-warping card for the entire time it was legal in the TCG. Every deck needed to have an out to this card or be able to play under it if they wanted to stand a chance, and this only included select few decks because, believe it or not, most decks need the graveyard. People played all sorts of bad cards just because they get out a Rhyzart. A Rhyzart turned every game it was summoned into a game of better draw the out because if you did out it, it wasn't coming back. It led to a very swingy format that was very reminiscent of stuff like 2020 Buster Lock. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
A Rhyzart is kinda like Mystic Mind, an incredibly powerful and annoying card that could potentially end the game on its own, but if prepared for, would mostly just get outed immediately. Despite this, having to dilute your deck space just to fit unsearchable outs to floodgates is not fun. Auroradon is a Link 3 that requires 2+ machines. On summon, it makes 3 tokens and stops you from Link summoning for the rest of the turn. It can then tribute 1 monster to pop a card, 2 monsters to summon a Mecha Phantom Beast from deck, or 3 to add a trap from grave. So why did it get banned? This card is absolutely cracked. It made it so any way to summon Crystron Haka Fibrax meant that you could end on Baron, Savage, and Herald, and that's not counting any potential ways to extend further. The Halkdon combos, as they were called, were some of the most degenerate things this game has ever seen. This is kind of the pinnacle of an unfun card. It enables a super long combo that ends on a bunch of generic Omni negates that pretty much turned every deck into a shell that could pump it out as fast as possible. Could this card come back?
No.
Now, currently this card would be really bad. There isn't a good way to summon it, and most of the good boss monsters it made are now banned. That being said, there's no telling if and when a good Synchro Machine deck will ever come out and completely break this card again. Haka Fibrax is a Link 2 monster requiring 2 monsters including a tuner. On summon, it summons a level 3 or lower tuner from the deck. It also had another effect to tag out into a tuner Synchro monster on the opponent's turn, but it was rarely used. Yeah, I don't know what I was on here. The effect to tag out into a Synchro was actually very good since you could tag into TG Wonder Magician and pop a Scythe and lock the opponent. So why did it get banned? I say this with no hyperbole, Crystron Haka Fibrax might be the strongest combo enabler ever. For the 2 years it was legal, it was spawned a near infinite amount of combos, some fairer than others. Hulk had the ability to convert itself into almost any Link monster thanks to it being able to summon pretty much anything you wanted. Most commonly it was Auroradon or Link Cross, but you could really make anything. Hulk was a known problem from the start, but Konami being Konami decided that the best course of action would be to ban every relevant tuner instead of Haka Fibrax, and for 2 years straight, tuners were slowly picked off until finally Konami bit the bullet and banned Hulk. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Hulk is one of the relatively few cards to be banned in all 3 official formats, and for good reason. It's way too generic in not only its material, but also what it can summon. It shouldn't be a surprise that summoning from deck on a Link 2 is too busted. Link Cross is a Link 1 requiring a Link 2 or higher monster as material. On summon, it summons tokens equal to the Link rating of the material used for its summon, though you can't Link summon using the tokens. So why did it get banned? Link Cross seems like it was designed to help synchro decks during the dark age that was Master Rule 4. However, at least in the TCG, it was released a month after the Master Rule revisions, so I have no clue what they were thinking with this card. Link Cross's main job was turning a spent Link monster into tokens that could be used for synchro summoning. Haka Fibrax is a great example. Hulk summon O-Lion, make Link Cross, then sync O-Lion plus a token into Martial Metal Marcher, and stop me if you've heard this one before. This led to so many stupid combos that Link Cross would eventually be banned only 8 months after its release. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Link Cross is banned in all 3 official formats. The ability to turn your extender into another extender is way too strong to be put on a Link 1. Zenmaid is a generic rank 3 requiring 2 3s, and has a soft once per turn effect to summon a wind-up monster from hand or deck. So why did it get banned? Wind-up was a very powerful deck around the release of Xyz monsters, mostly due to their soft once per turn effects that allowed them to spam monsters onto the field. However, the part that pushed them over the edge was Wind-Up Hunter. Hunter had the ability to rip cards out of the opponent's hand, and Wind-Up was able to do this very consistently. Konami eventually decided to ban Zenmaid over Hunter because even if Hunter was banned, Wind-Up still would have been the best deck by a lot. Could this card come back? This is the first time I'm not sure. You could make the argument that the TCG should do what the OCG and Master Duel did and just ban Hunter, but the TCG historically hasn't banned cards for the purpose of unbanning other cards. You could also argue that the deck plays really poorly into hand traps, but are fragile combo decks really what we want to bring back? I don't think that Wind-Up would be a competitive deck even with Hunter, but this card is just positioned in such a way that it likely won't and probably shouldn't ever come back. I stand by this. A bad hand loop deck is still a hand loop deck. Bright Elf is a Link 2 requiring 2 monsters, including a level, rank, or Link 2. It gives target protection to anything it points to, and as a quick effect can reborn at level 2, or if your opponent has a monster, it can be a rank or Link 2 instead. Only restriction is that Elf cannot be used as Link material the turn it's summoned. So why did it get banned? Elf is technically a Sprite card, and its ban was partially due to Sprite's power. However, the real problem with Elf is that they forgot to put a restriction on the card, so every deck that had a level or rank 2 monster in it played Elf. The biggest culprit was without a doubt Tearlament. They had access to Elf through Merly, which provided another way to mill in the opponent's turn, as well as giving blanket target protection to their boss monsters. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Elf is way too strong and way too generic to come back. Elf
itself was already strong combined with IP in a similar way to Flamberge, and that was before SP when you were just going into Avermax or a 2-Mad Apo. Its ability to make your boss monsters untargetable is also super annoying and would make boards even harder to out. Scarecrow is a Link 1 that requires a Super Heavy Samurai as material. If you have no spells and traps in grave, you can pitch a monster to reborn a Super Heavy Samurai. So why did it get banned? For about a month, Super Heavy Samurai was arguably the best deck of the format. It had just gotten its new support and had 12 one-card starters that all allowed you to end on stuff like Baron, Apollosa, Regulus, and sometimes even Spell Canceller. All of this was thanks to Scarecrow. Its ability to reborn Soul Piercer was invaluable for getting enough material to spam out these busted monsters. And Konami decided to hit the now 3-year-old Link 1 as opposed to the brand new support, which was still able to see play as a rank 4 engine. There was also an FTK 2, but it wasn't super popular. Could this card come back?
No.
This is a card with a very high ceiling. Super Heavy Samurai is completely unhit aside from this card, and while at the moment they wouldn't have anything to make, I don't trust Konami to not make more generically powerful Synchro and Link monsters. I don't see a purpose in unbanning a card knowing full well that it could very likely get banned again, like Snow. Also, this card is fine in Master Duel because Super Heavy has Soulbreaker ban and Peacemaker limited. VFD is a rank 9 requiring 2 or more 9s. As a quick effect, you could declare an attribute, all monsters of the field become that attribute, and your opponent can't attack or activate the effects of monsters of that attribute. So why did it get banned? VFD is a ridiculous floodgate. Because of how it's worded, VFD stops all monster effects from anywhere. Also, it's a lingering effect, so once it resolves, there's no stopping it. On release, you saw it play in True King Dino, but it was hardly the worst part of that deck. Gem Knight FTK played it as backup plan, and very high roll Invoke decks and even Orchist played it. It was a kind of card that everyone hated, but wasn't quite ban-worthy. That is until Virtual World came out. It's a deck that revolves around 3s, 6s, and 9s to spam out Synchro and Xyz monsters. This deck was able to pump out 2 of these things on the first turn, meaning that even decks with multiple attributes couldn't stand up to it since it was a soft once per turn. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This is one of the worst designed cards ever. Lingering Floodgates are the most infuriating cards to play against. Never make cards like this. Broadball is a rank 4 that requires 2 4s as material. Alternatively, once per turn, you can also rank it up over anyone's Zodiac monster, and it can detach a material to search any beast warrior that can be normal summoned as a soft once per turn. So why did it get banned? Broadball is an insane card. Imagine if King of the Feralymphs or Gallant Granite were Link 1s. That's pretty much Broadball. While Dryden gave Zodiac its immense power, Broadball is what enabled it to get that far. Initially, it was just used to search Rat or Whiptail, but later on a combo will be discovered that will break not only Broadball, but Emerald and Norden as well. Basically, off an Orphis Scorpio and a discard, you were able to draw 7+ cards throughout the course of your turn by abusing the soft once per turn effects on Broadball, Emerald, and Norden to search Lunalight Black Sheep, recycle everything, and extend forever. Broadball would eventually be banned to put a stop to Zodiac's reign on the game and has stayed there ever since. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Broadball is for sure a strong card, but as long as this thing isn't at more than 1 copy, I can't see it being a problem. I generally don't agree with unbanning a card because it wouldn't do anything now, but if a card like Feral Imp is perfectly fine, Broadball could definitely come to 1. In my defense, Mitsu wasn't out yet. After seeing the lengths people will go to search Habakiri and Protoss, I definitely think Broadball should stay banned. Level Eater is a level 1 monster that can reborn itself by reducing the level of a level 5 or higher monster you control, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? Level Eater was a card just waiting to be broken. Even from its initial release in 2009, people tinkered with ways to synchro climb with this card to no avail. This card would remain unusable until the release of Link monsters, more specifically Link Karibo. The core idea was to play Level Eater inside the shell of a deck that spammed high-level monsters, Infernoid, Blue Eyes, Dark Lord, and Kaiju to name a few. You would link off Level Eater, eat a level, link off Eater, eat a level, and keep going until you extra linked. Now, fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on who you ask, this deck would never actually see play since Level Eater would be banned the same weekend Link Karibo was released. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Level Eater is a classic case of a card made for a different era. A card that can infinitely recur itself is super abusable. There also is a way to set it directly to grave, meaning that any way to Diabolantis means full Level Eater combo, even without Link Karibo since Anima is now legal. Now, would it be good? Probably not. It immediately dies to Abystial, but this card has no other purpose other than to be part of a stupid combo that doesn't let the opponent play. There is no potential healthy use for this card. Sixth Sense is a normal trap card that lets you declare 2 numbers from 1 to 6. Roll a die, and if it's one of the numbers you declared, you draw that many cards. Otherwise, milk cards equal to the result. So why did it get banned? Sixth Sense was released into the TCG in 2013, which is odd because it feels like a card from 2003. This is because that's when it was released in the OCG and it was just never imported for 10 years. When it finally was, it was immediately limited, which is always a great sign. What's even better is the best deck at the time, Dragon Rulers, loved this card to death. A deck that needed a big hand and could play out of the graveyard, yeah, a card that says drawing 5 to 6 or mill 1 to 4 would be pretty strong. It was an incredibly sacky one-of that no one liked playing against, so it was banned only 2 months after its release. Could this card come back?
No.
This card would not see play in every deck, but for the decks that would play it, it would be insane. I don't want to have to see any control deck loop this thing with transaction rollback or Tearlament using this thing. It's a sacky one-of that wouldn't be game destroying, but it would be really frustrating because when it works, you just lose. You just be unbanning this card for no reason other than to say you unbanned Sixth Sense. Spiral Master Plan is a level 7 spellcaster that can search a Spiral mission as a soft once per turn. Also, if it's sent from field to grave, you can search for both a Spiral Resort and a Spiral Monster. So why did it get banned? Spiral Spiral is one of the most oppressive Tier 0 decks. Not only did it come directly after the previous Tier 0 deck, Zodiac, they also signaled the beginning of the dark times. When you hear Yu-Gi boomers complain about how the game is all about not letting the opponent play and by spamming infinite negates, this era is what they're still mad about. Spiral would regularly build boards that included an untargetable indestructible Trident, multiple pre-errata fireball dragons to bounce, and a utility wire to spin back a card. Most of this was thanks to Master Plan. Master Plan could be summoned from the deck thanks to Double Helix, so it meant that you could search for one of the traps, link it off, then search a monster and the field spell would search for another monster. Spiral would resurge in 2020 thanks to the release of Magician's Souls. Master Plan being a level 7 spellcaster meant that it could be dumped off souls to later be reborn. Could this card come back?
Yeah.
If you had asked me back in 2022 or even 2023 if this card could come back, I'd say
Hell no.
but enough time has passed. Combo decks better than Spiral have come and gone, and also this deck loses to literally every hand trap printed after 2017. Why is this Yu-Gi-Oh card banned? Part 58, Borreload Savage Dragon. Borreload is a generic level 8 synchro that can equip a link monster from grave on summon. It then gains counters equal to its link rating and can perform an Omni Negate by removing a counter. So why did it get banned? On release, Savage Dragon wouldn't see an insane amount of play. People played it for sure, but it wasn't an integral piece of any end board, primarily due to the restrictions Master Rule 4 placed on non-link monsters. So you could expect that as soon as the Master Rule revisions dropped, this card would skyrocket. And boy did it. Adamantipator was the first to truly break this card, using it alongside both Halka Fabric and Union Carrier to not only turbo it onto the field, but also lock the opponent out of the extra deck. Of course, it also saw play in its quote-unquote real deck, Dragon Link, but really any deck that could summon this thing would play it. And that was the problem. Any synchro deck, or really any deck that played tuners, just turned into a shell to vomit out Savage and eventually Baron. The deck to finally seal the deal was Snake Eye. It played 3 synchros total, and one of them was just a stepping stone for Baron. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
If you're going to make a generically good boss monster, you cannot give it an Omni Negate. Even if Savage is the weakest of the 3 generic Omni Negates, it's still way too powerful for its restriction of you have to play links. Apolos is a generic rank 4 requiring 2+ monsters with different names except tokens. It gains 800 attack for each material used for its summon and can reduce its attack by 800 once per chain to negate a monster effect. Not once per turn, once per chain. So why did it get banned? This is by far the strongest of the generic negates. It requires nothing but 4 link rating worth of monsters, which is absurd. Apo was a staple from day one, seeing play in pretty much anything that could feasibly make it. Its breakout success came from Adamantipator, which would regularly go into it using leftover bodies. Its ability to shut down any monster-heavy strategy, which is almost every strategy, was incredibly powerful, and the fact that any deck that could spam monsters, which is almost every deck, could summon it just made the problem worse. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Even at the absolute worst, this card wasted an opponent's battle phase just to beat over it, to say nothing of the countless turns this card has skipped into beers it's stopped and non-games it's created. For most decks, Apo felt like a more oppressive skill drain since it easily traded with half your hand. Good riddance. Mystic Mind is a field spell that prevents the player with more monsters from attacking or activating monster effects, and it destroys itself in the end phase if both players have the same amount of monsters. This rarely happened. So why did it get banned? Mystic Mind is probably the strongest floodgate in the game. It initially saw play as part of stall burn decks and saw moderate success. It was relegated to just being a boring floodgate and burn until players started side decking the card in other decks as a pseudo board breaker. If you had ways to force out your opponent's negates, a single Mystic Mind could very easily end the game. It being a field spell meant that it could also be searched by terraforming, metaverse, set rotation, even demise of the land if you were really down bad. It was a card that said, do you have Cosmic Cycle in your deck? If yes, we don't play until you find it. If no, we don't play until you deck out. Absolutely a miserable card that just forced both players to stare at each other until they either drew the out or all their cards. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Mystic Mind is one of the most toxic cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! This card single-handedly ruins several formats by just existing. Even if you did have it out to mine in your deck, you still had to sit across from your opponent passing for 10 turns until you actually drew it. It's the antithesis of what Yu-Gi-Oh! Should be and should never come back. Simorgh is a link 3 that requires 2+ monsters including a winged beast. It is a relevant effect too. In the end phase, summon a winged beast from deck whose level is less than or equal to the amount of unused spell and trap zones. Also, it and any winged beast it points to are untargetable. So why did it get banned? Simorgh was a powerful part of the bird up variant of Tri-Brigade. It could easily be cheated out by the Tri-Brigades. It would most often be used to summon Apex Avian as an Omni Negate or Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. Barrier Statue prevents both players from summoning non-wind monsters, and since most decks aren't wind, it was just a smaller Vanities ruler. Konami would eventually ban Simorgh over the Barrier Statue either because they deemed it too risky to leave Simorgh legal or they didn't want to hit Flu. Could this card come back?
Yeah.
This card is powerful for sure, but as we've seen with Denglong, playing a brick in the deck for an Omni Negate just isn't worth it anymore. Since Barrier Statue is banned, you'd have to only play Apex Avian, which is strong, but not necessarily that worth it. It is a bit scary that it can summon any winged beast from the deck, but the fact that it summons in the end phase and that it has to be a main deck monster is, at least in my opinion, a good enough restriction for this card to be unbanned. Graceful Charity is a normal spell that allows you to draw 3 cards then discard 2, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? This card was absolutely insane. Being able to dig 3 cards deep in old Yu-Gi-Oh! Was crazy, and most of the time the discard wasn't even a big deal. You could just discard monsters you didn't need so you could reborn them later or use them for chaos monsters. This card also synergized very well with Sinister Serpent and Thunder Dragon, who could act as free discards to basically let this card read draw 3. This card was all over the ban list for like 4 years. It was at 3, then 2, then 1, then banned, then back to 1, then banned again, then back to 1 again, then finally banned. Early Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list or something else. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
There are a lot of cards in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That trigger when discarded to the graveyard, so not only is this card a generic draw 3, its downside is almost entirely an upside. Imagine a deck like Tier or Dark World getting to resolve it. The game will be over immediately. This card is way too strong and should stay banned forever. Return is a normal trap card that, for the cost of half your life points, can summon as many banished monsters as possible, then banish them in the end phase. So why did it get banned? Return was a very powerful card in older Yu-Gi-Oh!, though it was primarily overshadowed by its older sibling, Dimension Fusion. However, the release of Dark Arm Dragon would lead to Dimension Fusion being immediately banned, which led to Return taking the spotlight. This created the Dad Return deck, which was basically a control deck that would just banish a ton of dark monsters with Dad to summon them back in OTK out of nowhere. This deck would get an entire format named after it, but Return would somehow dodge a ban. It would stick around for a few more years until it stopped playing Dragon Rulers. It did the same thing as before, except now it summoned dragons. Could this card come back?
Yes.
I struggle to think of a use case for this card. It's a trap card that is really only usable on your second turn, since unless you're summoning a whole bunch of banished monsters with interruptions, this thing does nothing on the opponent's turn. This card will probably see play in Malice for a week until people realize it's bad. Curious is a Link 3 that requires 3 monsters with the same attribute but different types. It had the relevant effect to dump any card and summon, then mill 3. So why did it get banned? Curious would see play almost immediately as part of Grass Piles as a way to get that last combo piece into the grave, like Snow. Then once Grass got banned, it saw play in Gemini FTK as a way to dump Block Dragon. Then once Master Diamond got limited, it saw play in pretty much every danger deck imaginable. Dark World FTK, Thunder Dragon, Orcus, Lunalight, Dark Warrior, and finally Tearlament. Its role in almost all these decks was to dump Cannon Soldier to FTK with Firewall Dragon, or a Floodgate to set off Nightmare Griffin. It was banned as a hit to Tier, but it didn't do anything since they stopped playing it after the Shizu cards came out anyway. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
We have seen with Beatrice just how powerful dumping any card is, so releasing it would almost certainly lead to some stupid locks, especially since Griffin is still legal, so you can still use it to basically search floodgates. Griffin may now be banned, but Curious should also still be banned. Norda is a level 4 fusion that requires 2 Synchro and or Xyz monsters as material. I do completely neglect to mention that this would be a very powerful Super Poly target against Xyz and Synchro decks, but I don't think that that's reason enough to keep this card banned, though it was mostly summoned off Instant Fusion. On summon, it reborns level 4 or lower monster, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? Norda itself played very early on in pretty much every rank 4 deck. With very little setup, a single Instant Fusion meant a 1 card rank 4. This was very powerful for 2015 and led the card to be played in every deck that played rank 4s, which was a lot of them. Norda would be an annoying part of the game for 2 years until it would finally be broken alongside the best rank 4 deck of its time, Zodiac. Using Fusion Substitute, Zodiac was actually able to properly summon Norda multiple times per turn to keep overlaying into Daikos or Emerald to allow them to make the standard Zodiac end board, but you also got to draw an extra 4 to 6 cards. This combo would eventually be what got Norda banned back in 2017. Could this card come back?
Yes.
The entire reason Norda was played was because Instant Fusion was at 3 its entire existence. Now, having Instant Fusion at 1 just means you have to play this in your extra deck, all for an unsearchable one-of that doesn't even get your play started. Also, if you're scared of this card in Yugioh, they already have Node, which is basically the same thing. Shockmaster is a generic rank 4 requiring 3 materials. You can detach a material and declare a card type, then until the end of the next turn, your opponent cannot activate cards of that type. Fun. So why did it get banned? Shockmaster was broken on release. Even though it wasn't easy to get 3/4s onto the field, it was by no means impossible. Wind Up famously could do it from just a Magician plus Shark. Other decks like Gadgets, Fire Fist, Six Samurai, Madolce, and other just rank 4 slop also played this card. Their gameplay never revolved around summoning it, but if they ever had a slightly good hand, they would just win the game on the spot. This card requiring 3 materials meant that you could use the effect 3 times. Even in 2012, this was absurd, and Shockmaster would be banned only 11 months after release. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Not much to say aside from this. Imagine Ryziel with this card. Ugh. Jin is a level 3 fiend that can be banished from grave to be used as material for a ritual summon, and if it is used as material for a ritual summon, your opponent cannot special summon monsters while that ritual monster is on the field. So why did it get banned? The Jins were released all the way back in 2008 as a way to try and help the failing ritual mechanic. They didn't, but releaser of rituals would see niche play for years in any coping ritual deck. It wouldn't be until 2015 with the release of Nekroz, also known as the first good ritual deck, for Jin to see some real play. Nekroz was the first ritual deck to be the best deck of its format, but Demise and Gishki were both playable and released before Nekroz. Most commonly, it will be sent off Lavalval Chain to then be banished for the summon of Shuret, which conveniently was level 3, and boom, your opponent couldn't special summon monsters. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Jin being a level 3 monster means that it can still be dumped off Cherubini, making it so incredibly easy to access. While it wouldn't fit nicely in any current ritual deck, this card is way too abusable and too unfun to ever come back. Mermaid is a Link 1 that requires a Nightmare monster as material. On summon, it discards a card to summon a Nightmare from deck. So why did it get banned? On release, its most notable attribute was that it was a second Link 1 that pointed down, so some decks would play it just so they could convert a Phoenix or Cerberus into a down arrow. This card will remain mid until the release of Orcus Nightmare. This card single-handedly took Orcus from a bricky mess to one of the most powerful deck/ends of its time. That's because any 2 monsters meant full Orcus combo. 2 monsters into Nightmare, Link for Mermaid, Mermaid summon Orcus Nightmare, make Galatea, and go off. This was so powerful that other decks with the room would slot in these cards to add an extra Omni Negate to their end board. It's very similar to what Fiendsmith is doing now. It was banned because it made getting into an Omni Negate way too easy and consistent for too many decks. Could this card come back?
Yes.
The only remotely scary part about this card is that it can summon Ibli from deck. Playing 3 bricks in the deck for an Omni just isn't good enough anymore. Ibli would probably be annoying, but 90% of decks play Links anyway, so it likely wouldn't be
be too bad. Goblin is a link to requiring 2 monsters with different names. On summon, you could discard a card to get an additional normal summon to a zone it points to. So why did it get banned? Like most of the nightmares, Goblin was intended to ease the transition into Master Rule 4, in this case by being a completely generic extender. The main issue is that Goblin was only really accessible in combo-heavy decks. Since it pointed to the sides, it needed something else in the EMZ for it to do anything. Goblin would see play primarily in Goki, a powerful combo deck that just needed ways to get monsters out of the hand. Now, Goblin was not the problem card in Goki. That honor goes to Firewall when it's U-linking, but it definitely wasn't fair, so it would be banned only 4 months after release. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Goblin has been incredibly power corrupted for the past 7 years. It's been banned. Decks aren't built around the normal summon anymore and have ways to extend on their own. This card just isn't needed anymore, and any deck that would theoretically want to use Goblin would not be broken because of it. Block Dragon is a level 8 rock monster that can banish 3 earths from your hand and or grave to summon itself from the hand or grave, not once per turn. Also, if this is sent from the field to the grave, you can search for up to 3 rock monsters whose total level equals 8. So why did it get banned? Block Dragon is way older than you think, releasing all the way back in 2016. This card would not have a home until the release of Phantom Quartz and the Gemini FTK. Block Dragon was pivotal in the combo, but it wasn't the problem card. It saw play in 2019 in Monster Mash / Earth BA decks. This deck would use Block Dragon as an extender that searched for either 2 more extenders or a Fossil Dino. Fun. Finally, we played an Adamantipator, a deck whose main 3 monsters very conveniently added up to 8 stars, meaning 1 Block Dragon activation meant full combo. Block Dragon would be banned to basically kill the deck without banning any of their cards. Could this card come back?
No.
I'm gonna get some hate for this one, but Block Dragon has the same issue that Circular and Isolde did. I stand by it. That card shouldn't have come back. It turned an entire type into a 1-card deck. Even ignoring that, its power level is so much higher than the average rock monster that it would certainly just end up being another Snake Rain situation. And while they have managed to make a reptile deck apart from Snake Rain, you can't really do that with Block Dragon. All you need to know about these cards is that they stop the opponent from special summoning. Nightmare stops you from summoning non-gimmick puppets if it's summoned to your field, and Xiao stops you as long as it's on field. So why did they get banned? I shouldn't have to explain why locking the opponent out of special summoning is broken, so instead I'll just go over their usage. Xiao was never used for anything fun. It saw play in last turn decks and Cheese wins, Spellbook decks to be summoned off Judgment, and lastly Voices Voice Branded, which would make Albion the Sanctifier Dragon with him plus Albaz to add a summon lock to their end board. It was also used in a hypothetical combo using a Baoku, but it was banned before she came out. Speaking of Branded, Nightmare was used as another target for Sanctifier Dragon, it being a level 8 Dark Mat that could be dumped off Grang, meaning that any way to Sanctifier plus Grang would be the lock. Could these cards come back?
Hell no.
Xiaogun is just a stun card, so enough said. Now, Nightmare is a bit different. As a resident fan of Gimmick Puppet before the new support, believe me when I say Nightmare is awful in Gimmick Puppet. Even if Sanctifier does get banned, this card should probably stay banned just in case they make another card that can summon it to your opponent's field. Rango is a rank 4 requiring a minimum of 2 and a max of 5 warrior monsters as material. It gains effects based on how many materials it has, but since it was always made with 4 to 5, it couldn't be destroyed by battle, doubled its stats, unaffected by card effects, stopped the opponent from normal specialing monsters, and was a full board wipe. Don't worry though, it had to detach material after the opponent's turn. So why did it get banned? Rango was released all the way back in 2015. It would see no serious play due to it taking 5 monsters and outing itself. That is until 2018. Rango Turbo was the final evolution of Dark Warrior, arguably the most comprehensive combo deck in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Rango would often be summoned with only 2 materials, but when paired with Gossip Shadow, it got to 5 immediately. This combo wouldn't last long as Rango would be banned a few months after this deck saw play. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
It's just a Floodgate and a Towers. Not much else to say other than it's a battle immune, unaffected, kaiju immune monster that's also a full board wipe. Enough said. Come on, Reboot is a counter trap that negates the activation of a trap card, sets the negated card back down, lets the opponent set a trap from their deck, then locks them out of using traps for the rest of the turn. Also, you can pay half your life to use it from hand. Side note, due to its wording, this card can only negate trap cards used on field, so no grave effects. So why did it get banned? Reboot is a blowout card, and a really, really good one at that. It's got like 3 extra effects that really push it over the edge. Why is it a counter trap? Why is its cost to activate from hand only life points? And why does it freeze back row for the entire turn? This card saw play anytime back row decks were remotely viable, and whenever it was dropped, the game was effectively over since you would just get a free turn to do whatever you wanted. It would be limited for a few years and be a very sacky one-of, but would later be banned. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Reboot is the trap decks what Shifter is to traditional decks. An unbelievably broken card that completely shuts off their deck assuming they don't draw the unsearchable out. There should be more ways of interacting with back row that aren't just blowouts. Come on, Cold Wave is a normal spell that must be activated at the start of your main phase 1. It stops both players from activating or setting spell traps until your next turn. So why did it get banned? Released all the way back in 2002, Cold Wave's main use was to secure a lethal line through any amount of back row. Your opponent's low, but they have 5 set cards, activate Cold Wave and end the game on the spot. This card wouldn't be too overbearing for a while, but it would be limited in 2009, then later banned in 2011. Cold Wave was just a super frustrating card to play against the completely invalidated back row. In fact, it was rarely ever used for its seemingly intended purpose of locking the opponent out of spell traps on their own turn. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Nowadays, the part where they can't use spell traps on their own turn is crazy. This card would just be sided in against any deck that relies on spells to function. As long as your deck isn't relying on spell traps, this card might as well have no downside. Both of these cards are traps that let you look at your opponent's hand and rip a card out. Pointer banishes a card into the end phase, makes you pay 2,000 life points, and reveals your hand, and Dust you spin the monster as long as they had 4 cards in their hand. So why'd they get banned? Going first cards are really powerful, having full hand knowledge is really powerful, and hand ripping is really powerful. Both of these cards check all 3 boxes. They're super old, coming out in 2003 and 9 respectively, and the only reason it took them so long to be banned was because either better versions were available or the game just wasn't fast enough. enough yet. Just should have the ability to set you back so far in tempo that you'd be stuck playing the entire game on the back foot. A pointer is much weaker and as such didn't see play until much later, where it would be splashed into side decks as a generally good card for going first and only help facilitate unbreakable boards. Could these cards come back?
Hell no.
Triple Tactics Thrust alone makes these cards infinitely more toxic since now they can be easily searched and added to an end board. Being both a hand rep and full knowledge is way too powerful. Chain is a generic rank 4 requiring 2 forwards as material. It can either dump any card or place any card on top of your deck. So why did it get banned? Lavalval Chain is arguably the best rank 4 ever printed. Sending any card to the graveyard on a soft monster turn was, and still is, very strong. It saw play in pretty much everything that could feasibly make it. Infernity uses it to dump Eris for Archfiend, Shadow uses it to trigger extra effects, Dragon decks used it to dump Dragon Rollers, and even mid decks like Gem Knight, Battle the Boxer, and Hero made use of it. However, the deck to break it would be Necroz. They would be able to consistently make Chain to send Jin, then use the Jin to ritual summon Clausulus and lock the opponent out of summoning. It would be banned alongside Jin mostly for future-proofing reasons. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
It's just a better Beatrice and Curious, 2 other very banned cards. Not much else to say. Scythe is a monster that can be placed in your spell and trap zone. If it is then destroyed on the opponent's turn, it reborns itself and locks the opponent out of their extra deck for the turn. So why did it get banned? Scythe was released alongside the other artifacts back in 2014. It saw play initially as a 1 of in hat decks, mostly being summoned off Sanctum to lock Infernity or Dolce out for a turn. But it would only be played as an alternative to Moraltalk. It wouldn't see real consistent play until late 2018 with Spiral. It started a trend of citing 3 Sanctum plus a Scythe for going first. If you drew the Sanctum, the game was practically over. For the next several years, we played in almost everything. The problem was only made worse with the release of Dagda in 2020, which could set Scythe on the deck, which meant any way to pop it meant the lock. Fun. This card was survived for way too long before finally being banned in 2023. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
What's better than D-Barrier? A D-Barrier that's searchable off a generic link too. Scythe deserves to rot on the list forever for that one. Invoker is a generic rank 3 that can attach to summon a level 4 Earth Warrior or Beast Warrior from deck. So why did it get banned? On release, Invoker wouldn't have a home. It didn't even have a real target to summon in its own archetype, but many players were aware of the potential this card had. Its first success came from a Dolce, where it would be used to summon Messengelato to kickstart your plays. A few years later, it would see play in Zodiac. Decks would play Terrortot to make Invoker with a normal summon and effectively play 6 copies of Barrage. Zoo wouldn't be what got it banned though. Terrortop got limit for its crimes. The deck to seal the deal would be Goki. They could make it a number wave, but the goal was to use it to get the second warrior on board for Resolve. Could this card come back?
Yes.
Invoker is powerful for sure, but it's just limited enough to be okay. The fact that it's a rank 3 that summons 4s means that you have to dedicate space in your main deck to play it. Trinity is a normal spell that bounces all spells and traps on field. So why did it get banned? Trinity was busted for multiple reasons. First, it was another mass back row clear, and while it wasn't permanent, it was still able to clear battle traps and swing for game. Second, it could be used to return your own cards to your hand to re-trigger their effects, like Premount Archfiend's Oath. Finally, and this came much later, it was a form of mass back row removal that played around common protection like Stardust and Starlight Road. Trinity was very frustrating since it basically acted as Cold Wave that didn't affect you at all. You just bounced your own cards just to reset them and use them anyway. That is if the game wasn't over by then. Could this card come back?
No.
Trinity is the best of the mass back row removal. Not only can it be used to reactivate certain effects for you, it also is a way to remove all back row while ignoring any protection they might have. That being said, I could see it coming off at some point, but that time is definitely not now. Painful Choice is a normal spell that lets you choose 5 cards from your deck, let your opponent pick 1 to add to your hand, then mill the rest. These cards do not have to have different names, can activate their effects this turn, and no, it's not once per turn. So why did it get banned? This might be it. The strongest spell card in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Released all the way back in 2002, Painful Choice would see play immediately. And mind you, this was a time when the best thing you could do was send all your power spells and make your opponent give you one. The most advanced combo you could do was send Summon Skull then Reborn it. This card was unlimited for 14 days before being limited, then wouldn't be banned for another 3 years. At that point, Chaos Monsters existed, so this card could not only get you your best spell, but also set up your graveyard for Chaos plays. Could this card come back? Do I even have to explain this one? Activate Painful Choice, reveal Murley, Havnus, Sheeran, Rhino, Tearcash. What's the most broken 5 card you can think of sending off this? Eclipse Wyvern is a monster that banishes a level 7 or higher later Dark Dragon when it's sent to the graveyard. If it's then banished, you get to add that monster to your hand, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? The initial idea of this card was that it could help you plus off summoning a Chaos monster. It saw play for this purpose, but wouldn't be a problem until the release of the Guard Dragon links. LB could summon it straight from the deck, making it very easy to access, and Pisty could resummon it even after it was banished. The main target for Eclipse Wyvern was the newly released Chaos Dragon Levianeer, also Armageddon Dragon and Red MD2. Levianeer was an incredibly powerful board breaker, extender, and even a hand rip. This card will be banned in 2019 primarily so they wouldn't have to ban LP, and look where that got them. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
It may have been a weird hit at the time, but Eclipse Wyvern 100% deserves its spot on the list. The Bystials completely break this card, since now not only do you have a way to banish Wyvern easily, you also have a much better search target in Lubellion. Ridiculously busted card that should stay banned. Come on, cards you want to see next. Why is this Yu-Gi-Oh card banned? Part 83, Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is a normal spell that tributes a monster to cheat out a fusion monster with the same level as the tributed monster. So why did it get banned? Metamorphosis was printed at a time when fusion summoning was at its all-time weakest. It was intended to be a way to actually let you summon these monsters without needing as much investment, though it wouldn't be successful until the release of Thousand Eyes Restrict. I misspoke when I said Metamorphosis was bad until Thousand Eyes Restrict came out. It was actually the other way around. Thousand Eyes was bad until Meta came out. you attribute a scapegoat token to bring it out, making it basically free. This is the deck/interaction Goat format is named after. It would see play again as part of Demise OTK. This time you attribute Demise to bring out Cyber Twin Dragon in OTK. This would get the card banned. Could this card come back?
Yes.
I'm sorry, this card is bad. As an unsearchable one of, its only goal is to potentially strengthen an Endboard that was already able to pop off. Sure, there are broken targets to summon, but Last Warrior blows up your entire field and loses to Fissure, and Exterio is really annoying, but decks that play enough 10s are either bad or don't have a space to run a card in the extra deck for an unsearchable win or more spell. Soul Charge is a normal spell that lets you summon any amount of monsters from your graveyard, then pay 1,000 life per monster. Also, you can't enter your battle phase the turn you use the card. So why did it get banned? Soul Charge is probably the most baffling card ever. Not only was it ridiculously broken on release as both an extender and a comeback card, it would remain broken for 5 years. The entire time it would be played in pretty much every deck. There isn't a specific deck to go over or combo to account, it was just broken in every scenario. Who would have guessed that summoning a whole bunch of monsters for free would be broken? Also, this card was legal until 2019! Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This is the best generic extender ever printed. Everything would play it, and it would feel awful to have it activated against you. Smoke Grenade is an equip spell that, if it's destroyed while equipped to a monster, looks at your opponent's hand and rips a card, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? Smoke Grenade was a sort of joke card for many years. It being an equip spell that does nothing until it's destroyed definitely wasn't helping. That is until the release of the Infernoble Knights. They were a powerful archetype that revolved around equip spells. By using both Isolde and their boss monster Charles, they were able to loop Smoke Grenade multiple times to end on a board of multiple negates on field and 2 to 3 fewer cards in your hand. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Now, this card did get much worse with Isolde's ban, but that being said, if this card was legal, it would be the game plan for several decks. Hand rips are incredibly unfair and unfun, so thank God this card is banned. Dimension Fusion is a normal spell that pays 2,000 life points to allow both players to summon as many of their banished monsters as possible. So why did it get banned? This card was released alongside the Chaos monsters back in 2004. The clear synergy was to banish the monsters to summon Chaos guys, then have Dimension Fusion bring them back. Even with this card being reciprocal, it would still be too strong and would eventually be limited in 2006. So the card to do it in would be Dark Arm Dragon. Not only could you banish tons of monsters to fuel Dimension Fusion, you also got to wipe your opponent's board for an easy OTK. This card would be legal for 2 months after Dad came out, and for good reason. Could this card come back?
No.
This card is stupid. While I don't believe this card would do much, only something from banishment is much worse than you think, it still has several decks that would love to use it to extend into the Suns. Amaryllis is a level 8 plant that can only be summoned by its own effect. If it's destroyed, it burns the opponent for 800. During the end phase, it can banish a plant from grave to reborn itself. None of these are once per turn. So why did it get banned? FTKs, yeah! Amaryllis still played back in 2010 in plant decks as a recursive big body, but wouldn't see much success during its time. That is until an FTK was found using Topologic Bomber Dragon in 2017. Basically, all you had to do was get Amaryllis plus 10 plants in grave and then pass. Amaryllis would banish a plant, reborn itself, get destroyed by Bomber Dragon, then burn for 800. The process would repeat 10 times until the opponent lost. Now, this combo was never actually legal in the TCG due to the strange release schedule around this time. Key cards like Summon Sources, Jasmine, and Hulk just weren't out yet, so the card would be banned preemptively to stop the FTK. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This FTK is really bad, especially since all the good enablers are banned. However, this is just an FTK card and nothing more, so it has no place in the game. Stein is a level 2 monster that, for the cost of 5,000 life points, can cheat out any fusion monster. Not once per turn, but only ever matter for gimmicky loops. So why did it get banned? Stein was the first ever prize card given out in 2004 and 5 for winning a Shonen Jump Championship, or SJC, and it wouldn't see much initial play because of this. That was until the release of both Cyber Twin and End Dragon. They were just big fusions with a lot of attack. Them being machines also meant that limiter removal could be used as well as Megamorph for huge attacks. On top of that, Stein could be searched by very common cards like Sangan, Tomato, and even Last Will while it was legal. It would be the recipient of Yu-Gi-Oh's first ever emergency ban in 2006 to stop its OTKs. Stein would actually be unbanned in 2019. It did nothing but add to broken end boards. Cheating out Exterio was a bit too much to handle. It would get rebanned in 2023. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
There isn't a healthy use for this card. It's still highly searchable and its targets are still strong as ever. Kaiser Coliseum is a continuous spell that prevents your opponent from controlling more monsters than you do as long as you have at least one on field. One thing to keep in mind is that there is no restriction on the user. So why did it get banned? Kaiser was a really annoying card that fortunately was banned before it could ever become a problem. It came out in 2005 and saw very little play for years. The main issue is that it just wasn't good to try and sit on one monster and hope your opponent doesn't have removal. It would see niche play in decks like Bujin, which was able to maintain one monster, Cosmos, since Dark Destroyer can't be targeted, and of course Stun. Now, none of these would be meta breaking, but the card would still get banned in 2016 and has since been banned in all formats. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This card has aged very well. There are many decks that are content to sit on an unaffected monster and wait you out, as well as control stun decks that don't play many monsters anyway. And the real kicker is that there is no downside to playing this. Floodgates just make for boring games, so it's to stay banned. Summon Limit is a continuous trap that prevents both players from summoning more than twice, and due to a very weird ruling, summons done before this card is flipped count towards a total, so there's no way to play around it. So why did it get banned? This is one of the strongest floodgates ever, and the crazy thing is that it was just okay for a long time. When this card came out in 2008, most people weren't summoning more than twice anyway. anyway. As time progressed, it only aged better and better. Eventually, we see playing Snake Eye. Snake Eye was a tier 0 combo deck that on top of everything else it did, could out its own floodgates. This would be the final nail in the coffin for Summon Limit, since now they could set up their whole board, flip Summon Limit, then even if you were able to break their board through Summon Limit, they could just remove it and kill you. It will be banned in 2024. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Floodgates are stupid, especially ones that remember things that happened before they were flipped. Stupid card, stay banned. Vanity's Emptiness is a continuous trap card that stops both players from special summoning, though if any card is sent from your deck or field to grave, it destroys itself. So anything from activating a spell trap or getting a card destroyed or milled would pop the card. So why did it get banned? This is arguably the best floodgate of all time, which is why it might shock you to hear that this card actually didn't see widespread play on release. This is due to the game being slower, players overstating its restriction, and also because Royal Oppression was still legal. It was played for sure, but it wasn't an auto-include until the Dragon Rulers came out. If you flipped Emptiness and they didn't have Blaster plus a fire, they lost on the spot. From then on, the card would be a staple side deck card and sometimes even main deckable. It would stay a very annoying part of the game until it would finally be banned in 2017, 7 years after release. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
No. Link Decoder is a Link 1 that requires level 4 or lower Cybers as material. If it's sent to the grave as Link material for a monster with 2800 or more attack, it reborns itself but banishes when it leaves the field. So why did it get banned? Link Decoder saw play in various Cyber decks as just another extender, but this time it was a Link 1. It would remain unremarkable until the release of Malice. Malice, at this point in time, was a powerful Cyber deck that struggled with extension. A hand trap on the normal summon could sometimes just end their turn. That's where Decoder came in. Now, if your normal summon got negated, you could link it off for Decoder, banish the name with the Bestial, which Malice was happy to play anyway, resummon the name, and now you have 3 monsters that can be turned into a red ransom or a white binder. And since both their stats lined up, you could reborn Decoder to extend further. Could this card come back?
No.
Decoder's ban didn't kill Malice, and it wasn't supposed to. It did, however, weaken the deck. This card coming back wouldn't break Malice, but it doesn't need to come back, at least not yet. Mindmaster is a level 1 Psychic monster that can pay 800 life points and attribute to Psychic to summon a level 4 or lower Psychic from deck, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? At first, you might be under the impression that this card was part of some ridiculous FDK, what with it having a non-once per turn effect to summon monsters from the deck, but it was actually banned for its use in a powerful OTK. Mindmaster OTK just needed Mindmaster 2 Psychics on board, as well as Brain Research Lab. You would have Mindmaster keep summoning Psychics, including Destructotron to beat back row, Power Injector to pump up your field, Psychics now to attack twice, finally into Reinforced Human Psychic board to attack twice for 4,000 damage each. For 2009, this was incredibly powerful, and the only reason it wasn't played more was because Teledad was just that dominant. Mindmaster will be limited in 2009 and eventually banned in 2011. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
While historically this card wasn't used for FTKs, it certainly would be now. Cards that just go infinite are not healthy for the game. Royal Oppression is a continuous trap that allows either player to pay 800 life points to get a special summon or effect a special summon, not once per turn or even once per chain. So why did it get banned? Royal Oppression is another very old floodgate released in 2003. It wouldn't see much play for several reasons. 1, it had to be flipped preemptively so you couldn't surprise to get a Chaos Sork or something. 2, back removal was very common. And 3, there just weren't enough decks that relied on special summoning. Fast forward to 2010, Synchros now exist, giving a much easier telegraph for when to flip, and special summons are much more common. For this reason, the card would see lots of side deck play and pretty much anything that didn't completely fold to it. However, stopping both players from playing isn't very fun, so the card will be banned in 2011. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This is basically just Vanity's Emptiness with no self-destruct button. Absurdly broken card that would only serve to benefit going first. Mirage of Nightmare is a continuous spell that, during your opponent's standby phase, lets you draw until you have 4 cards in hand. Then, during your standby phase, it randomly discards cards equal to the amount you drew. So why did it get banned? Mirage is a very old spell released all the way back in 2003 and saw success immediately. The ability to draw 4 cards at will was very powerful even despite the downside. That is if you were even paying the downside. If you were to say MST Mirage Port Resolved, you wouldn't have to discard anything and you would have effectively drawn 4. Similarly, you could negate it with Imperial Order or even just set cards out of your hand with Dust Tornado. Not even mentioning the fact that Sinister Serpent and Resurrection effects also exist. The card will be limited only a month after release, then banned 2 years later in 2005. Could this card come back?
Yeah.
This card is just a bad going first card. Hypothetically, you could draw 4 hand traps off of it, but if you're playing a deck with lots of hand traps, you likely aren't passing with 0 cards in hand, meaning at best you're drawing 1 or 2 cards during the opponent's standby phase, which is by no means broken. There just isn't a deck that both wants to end on 0 cards in hand and also would have live draws. Abyss Dweller is a generic rank 4 Xyz that requires 2 4s as material. It has the relevant effect to, as a quick effect, detach a material to stop the opponent from activating effects in the graveyard for the turn. So why did it get banned? Dweller was a stain on the format for as long as it existed. The graveyard has always been an important part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Being able to shut it off for an entire turn is incredibly powerful. The fact that it was both a generic rank 4 and one-sided just pushed it over the edge. The decks to finally do it in were Rizio, a modern rank 4 span that would effortlessly pump this thing out, and Mermail, a water combo deck that included it alongside their hand loops and Omni Negates. Dweller would be banned in 2025, nearly 13 years after release. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This is a one-sided blowout floodgate attached to a generic rank 4. It's criminal it took them this long to ban it. OSS is a normal spell that sends any face-up card you control to grave to special summon a level 1 fire from deck. You can also banish it from grave for a cycle of Snake Eye or Diabell Star and add a level 1 fire, though you can only use 1 effect per turn. So why did it get banned? If you played Yu-Gi-Oh! At any point in 2024, you should be very familiar with Snake Eye, but for those who aren't, Snake Eye is probably the most comprehensive combo deck we've ever seen. It just did everything. Tons of 1-card starters, infinite extension, and crazy follow-up. And almost all of it was due to this card. It was easy to search, summon literally
literally anything you wanted, could plus you off its cost, and also was your follow-up. The card would eventually be banned at the end of 2024 to finally kill Snake Eye after its year-long dominance over the game. Could this card come back?
No.
Snake Eye would still be very powerful in today's meta. Not tier 0, but definitely strong. I for one am still sick of the deck and many feel the same, so the card should stay banned for the foreseeable future. Card of Save returns to continue a spell that draws a card every time you summon from grave, not once per turn. So why did it get banned? Released in 2003, this card wouldn't see much play, primarily due to how precious resurrection effects were at the time. However, this wouldn't be for too long. As zombie decks became more powerful during the GX era, so too did this card. Mizuki and Zombie Master were already a good card, but then being able to draw as well was crazy. The thing to break it would be synchros, zombie synchro decks specifically. Now you get the same old draws, but you also get to use Plague Spatter for completely free. The card would be limited but still used in decks like Lightsworn and Blackwing, and would finally get banned in 2009. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This is a card that realistically wouldn't break the game. It's only good going first, it's unsearchable, and the effect only really comes up if you're already able to play. But it would be an incredibly annoying card that wouldn't make the game better for it existing. Even a mid going first blowout should be too much. Bahamut Shark is a rank 4 requiring 2 level 4 waters. You can attach a material to cheat out a rank 3 or lower water exceeds monster, but Bahamut Shark can't attack that turn. So why did it get banned? Released in 2012, this thing seemed broken. A rank 4 that could cheat out another Xyz, however, it wouldn't see play on release. Since the cheated out monster wouldn't have material, there weren't many cards that actually did anything. That is until the release of Totally Awesome. It ticked all the boxes. Awkward to summon normally, really powerful disruption, Omni Negate, and it didn't require any materials. The duo would see play in several decks, but none of them were ever able to make it big. Fast forward to 2024, and Mermail's new support makes them insane. Bahamut Shark's purpose was to detach Dragoons for cost, triggering its effect while also being able to summon Toad as the 5th summon, insulating you from Nibiru. It also started seeing play in Ryzeal thanks to a small shark package, allowing them to also end on Toad. The card would be banned in December 2024. Could this card come back?
No.
You could argue that Toad was the better ban, but I'd argue that Bahamut Shark was 100% the problem. It made Toad way too easy to access, and notably was a water rank 4 that could detach on an open board, which was relevant for Mermail. I'm sorry, Shark players, but it was time for him to go. Nightmare Griffin is a link 4 requiring 2+ monster with different names. On summon, it sets a spell trapped from grave, but it can't be activated that turn. And while it's on field, special summon monsters can't activate their effects unless they're linked, which means it either points to another monster or another monster points to it. So why did it get banned? Griffin was always a stupid card. It never saw play in decks that were aiming to play fair. It was primarily played alongside Curious, since he could dump anything like, say, a Floodgate that Griffin could then set, making a very consistent, albeit convoluted way to search any Floodgate in the game. Griffin's usage would tank after Curious got banned. It would still see play in Live Twin and Unchained decks as a powerful boss monster that usually was unnecessary, though Malice would be the deck to finally take out Griffin. Nothing really changed in how it was used. Malice was just better at summoning it than previous decks. This ease of summoning would get the card banned in April 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
It's a Floodgate that resides in the extra deck. That is unbelievably stupid. Stay gone. Last turn is a normal trap that can only be activated on your opponent's turn while you have 1,000 or less life points. It sends all cards of each player's hand and field to grave except one monster you control. Then your opponent summons a monster from their deck and attacks your monster. And the only player with a monster left on field wins the duel. Any other case is a draw. So why did it get banned? This card was only ever used in gimmicky FTK decks that just lowered their life points to 1,000, summoned Xiaogan, then flipped last turn and won on the spot since your opponent couldn't summon. And due to how this card was worded, that counts as a win. This card will be banned in 2006 because of this. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Where do I start? This card is a ruling nightmare. It's still an FTK card, sure, but Konami doesn't even know how this thing works. When do graveyard effects trigger? Do they trigger? What happens to an unaffected monster? What about monsters with effects that activate in the damage step? This card says the player who controls a monster in the end phase wins, so what happens to effects that activate during specific phases? What if you can't conduct your battle phase? What if your opponent doesn't have a monster in deck? What if the monster they summon switches itself to defense? None of these are stated on the card and have no official rulings. The combination of this being both a confusing and toxic card seal the deal. King of the Feral Imps is a generic rank 4 that can detach to search any reptile. So why did it get banned? King of the Feral Imps is well over a decade old at this point and really didn't see any play before 2025. Some old rank 4 spam decks could search Gigabyte or Kage in the past, but that's it. That is until the release of Mitsurugi. Mitsurugi was arguably the best deck of its format, and part of its success was its synergy with Ryzeal, a modern rank 4 spam deck. Any extra Ryzeal bodies could be turned into Feral Imps to search Saji or later Habakiri to perform full Mitsurugi combo during your Ryzeal combo. And it wasn't just Ryzeal. Other decks like Orcus made great use of Feral Imps to bridge into Mitsu. The card will be banned in September 2025 to stop Mitsu's insane splash ability without hurting the pure variant. Could this card come back?
No.
I used to be of the opinion that the Rhotic Xyz monsters were all fine and it was crazy to think about hitting them, but I've definitely come around on that. Cards like these can allow for some bridges that shouldn't be allowed. Splash Mage is a link 2 requiring 2 Cyberse monsters as material. It can reborn a Cyberse monster defense, so it can't bring back a link, then locks you into Cyberse. So why did it get banned? Splash Mage is just one of the many Cyberse extenders. The main benefit of this one was that it turned 2 monsters into a link 3 for basically free. You could also then just make Transcode Talker and turn those monsters into a link 4 or 5. This was fine for years, mostly because there weren't broken Cyberse decks. The only one to warrant a hit was Mathmech, which just got circular banned for a bit, but the Cyberse deck to do it in would be Malice. Malice really isn't much different from any other Cyberse link climbing strategy. It was just much much better. The main issue with Malice and Cyber's decks in general is that they don't have a defined choke point. This is because of the insane amount of extenders they have access to. Lots of them are even in the extra deck. Splash Major we hit mostly to kill off Malice, but also because it's just a frustrating card to deal with. Could this card come back?
No.
I really don't think Cyber's decks need another extender. I can see them unbanning it at some point, but for now it should 100% stay banned. Moon is generic Link 2, just taking 2 effect monsters, and its effect doesn't matter. All that does matter is that it's a light fiend. So why did it get banned? Fiendsmith. Got banned because it allowed for every deck to bridge into Fiendsmith with just 2 monsters on board. The Fiendsmith cards allowed every deck to have access to a Desiree, which beats Board Breakers and can OTK, or 2 Solemn Warnings and Ascend with Caesar and in Paradise. It also provided follow-up and easy grind for every deck. Fiend decks could even use it to bridge into Aerial Eater to dump any Fiend. Fiendsmith will remain a part of the meta for a little over a year, seeing play in everything, but most notably Snake Eye, Yubel, Ryziel, Malice, Mitsurugi, and Orchist. This doesn't include the more pure decks either. Moon will get banned in September 2025 to stop decks from having instant access to Fiendsmith. Could this card come back?
No.
I might be Fiendsmith's biggest defender, but I do agree with this ban. Mostly because you can still play Fiendsmith, just not in every deck. Now you have to either play a much larger package in the main deck or have a light Fiend. I don't say this often, but good ban, Konami. Paradise is a generic rank 5 taking 2+5s as material. During your main phase 1, you can attach 2 materials and make both players roll 2 dice. Player rolls a higher combined total cannot attack or activate monster effects until the end of the next turn. So think of it as a turn skip for whoever loses. The broken part is that if you make it with 3 materials, you could force 1 die to be 7, making it a 92% chance it works out in your favor. So why did it get banned? It's just VFD. They made VFD, but again. And of course it was made in 2018. That just makes perfect sense. It actually had a very similar trajectory to VFD. It was released at a time when it was very impractical to make, so no one did. Until K9 came out in 2025. K9 is a deck that is very adept at making rank 5s and lots of them. Funnily enough, Konami kinda knew this would be an issue and locked Jokul and Lantern out of being used for light Xyz monsters if they're special summoned by their own effect. Obviously this wasn't enough, but they would still be able to make it in any above average hand. It will be banned in September 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Cards like these shouldn't exist in the first place. They aren't fun for anyone and just create non-games. Ouroboros is a generic rank 4 requiring 3 monsters as material. It's got a long effect, but the relevant part is that it has a soft once per turn effect to hand rip. So why did it get banned? Ouroboros was released in 2013 and didn't see much success. Evilstorm was a competent rogue deck, but Ouroboros had nothing to do with it. It would see some play in Starship Shadal in 2015, however. It had the niche of being the second best 3 material rank 4. After this, it wouldn't see play again until 2025 in Ryziel. Ryziel was a meta rank 4 spam deck that benefited from the years of powerful rank 4s. While initially didn't bother with Ouroboros, after a few hits and the release of the Automat support, Ryziel Automat became a terrifying rogue deck thanks to this card. They could easily summon Ouroboros once, rip a card, overlay into Eclipse Twins, send Twins away to bring back Ouroboros, rip another card, and still attach Twins to Detonator for the opponent's turn. Beating a combo ward is hard enough already, but having to do it with 2 less cards in hand is even worse. It will be banned in October 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
This card does nothing but hand rip. No way. Protos is a level 11 worm that can be summoned by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from grave. It can't be destroyed by card effects and can declare an attribute on field, destroy all monsters with said attribute, and lock both players out of summoning monsters with that attribute for 2 turns. Fun. So why did it get banned? Protos is one of the few modern cards to be banned twice. The first time it got banned was in 2022 with Sword Soul. Sword Soul can not only set up 3 attributes in grave with ease, they could also search the thing. Konami would recognize this as toxic and ban the card after only 3 months. It would stay there for 2 years before randomly being limited in 2024. My only guess is that they really wanted to make sure the new Ritual Beast support would be playable, and it was, and Protoss was a big reason for that. It was easy to get fire on board so Protoss could lock Snake Eye and Tempai, and Protoss itself was dark, which shut down Yubel. It being a linger effect made it even more annoying, since even if you did out, you would still be locked. It would continue to dodge banlist until decks started playing Infernal Flame Banshee to search flag, allowing any deck that can make a rank 4 Protoss access, which is a lot of them. It will be banned in October 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Lingering Floodgates are insanely cringe. No. Fossilidon is a level 4 rock monster that nukes all special summon monsters when flipped, and while it's face up, prevents both players from special summoning at all. Fun. So why did it get banned? Fossilidon is one of the oldest and most iconic stun monsters of all time. Ever since its release back in 2008, it's always been seen as some heinous brood designed to ruin someone's local, and for the majority of its history, that's all it was. Eventually, players would start finding ways to incorporate it into their end board. Hypothetically, any deck that could make Gallant Granite without the normal summon could easily access this card, but you'd be surprised how few decks actually wanted to do that. It was usually too cumbersome to do and would only ever be played in gimmicky rogue decks. That is until the release of Habakiri. Habakiri does pretty much everything, but for the sake of Fossil Dyna, it could set up a board wipe, kind of an Omni and an actual Omni on top of Fossil Dyna, and that was if they were playing it pure. This would get Dyna banned in October 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no.
Floodgates are bad. End of story. Mjolnir is a level 5 monster that effectively has the ability to, when summoned during the opponent's turn, remember that, lock the controller out of summoning non-artifacts for 2 turns. So why did it get banned? Mjolnir was released in, get this, 2018, alongside a bunch of other very fun cards. No one really paid attention to it because of all the FTKs that were playable around this time. And even once those were taken out back, it still saw no play. Now, a bit of clarification. Mjolnir only locks when it's summoned on the opponent's turn, and while you might think that means you have to summon it to your opponent's field on their turn, that's not how it works. What you actually have to do is summon it to the opponent's field on your turn, because your turn is your opponent's turn for the opponent. If that didn't make sense, just know you have to summon Mjolnir in the opponent's field on your own turn. And until the release of Imperial Princess Kinkari in 2023, there wasn't a good way to do that. And even after her release, no deck will be able to lock until K9. K9 was a rank 5 spam deck that resorted to Mjolnir after Paradise got banned, and they could do it off of a single Noroi by going through Dagda and Azalea. This would get Mjolnir banned in October 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
This thing does nothing but lock. Nope. Dimensional Barrier is a normal trap that lets you declare a type of monster, Ritual Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Pendulum, negate the effects of all monsters of the declared type, and stop them from being summoned for the rest of the turn. So why did it get banned? D-Barrier was released back in 2017, shortly before the release of Link monsters actually, which is why it doesn't include them. This was around the time Turnskip started deciding games by themselves. Stuff like this and Max C would just take an otherwise interesting game and turn it into a one-sided blowout. Once Links entered the game, it would take a back seat. Since Master Rule 4 made any non-Link deck very hard to play, it wasn't worth playing a card that did nothing about Links. Once the Master Rule revisions came out and freed non-Link monsters, this card got significantly better. It would see often on side deck play depending on the format, and every time it was played, the game just felt miserable. There wasn't any one deck that got D-Barrier banned. It was a combination of Thrust being able to search it and players just getting sick of it. It would get banned in October 2025. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
Like all Floodgates, this card doesn't slow the game down. This card will be set at the end of a combo and allow for zero counterplay from the opponent. And it's not even about extra decks not being diverse, because in formats where that's the case, the card wasn't played. Card lists are only played when they insta-win the game, so there's no possible fair use for this card. White Binder is a Link 3 requiring 2+ monsters including a Malice. On summon, it banishes up to 3 cards from either player's grave, it can set a Malice trap from deck or grave, and if it's banished, can resummon itself and draw a card by paying 900 life. So why did it get banned? Malice was released in late 2024 and would immediately see success. The deck's main goal was to set up a decent end board with layered interruption and great follow-up, and White Binder facilitated this in 2 ways. 1, it was an extender since it could banish your other Malice names and set traps, and 2, it was a great disruption because Soul Release effectively being a quick effect is very strong. Malice would be a top tier deck but would receive a support that took it to a whole other level. Now the deck was heavily incentivized to play like a Cyber Slop deck and just vomit out a bunch of big Link monsters with negates. Malice would go on to be hit on 2 separate ban lists and would still see play, which prompted Konami to actually ban an engine piece, something they rarely do anymore. Could this card come back?
No.
Malice needs to stay dead for a while. It's been playable for over a year, and despite the fact that it's never won a YCS, I don't think anyone will miss it. Could probably come back at a later date though. Herald's is a generic level 4 synchro that banishes any monster sent from hand or deck to grave, contribute itself for an Omni Negate, and if it's sent to grave, you can add a ritual spell or monster. None of that is a once per turn. So why did it get banned? Herald came out back in 2014 and would see play in many decks during its time, both as an endboard piece and as a searcher. Synchro decks liked it because it was often pretty easy to incorporate a level 4 synchro at the end of a combo, and ritual decks loved it because it synergized super well with cards like Nadir Servant and eventually Diviner. But Herald wouldn't be a problem until Yummy. Yummy was a powerful deck with a strong, layered endboard that could also just add an Omni Negate plus Floodgate to it. Now while this was strong, it was nothing compared to Mitsurugi Yummy. Through Herald, Yummy was able to perform their mainline combo, link off Herald, add Habakiri to do full Mitsu combo, then just summon a second Herald. Herald would get limited before this deck would be fully realized, but even that wouldn't be enough because players started using Samsara Sorrow Cat to recycle it even at 1. This deck would get Herald banned in January 2026. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
This thing is a generic Floodgate, Omni Negate, and non-once per turn searcher. It's a crime it was legal this long to begin with, especially with that new Synchro hand trap coming out. Harpy's Featherstorm is a normal trap that, if you control a Wind-Winged Beast, negates all monster effects your opponent activates for a turn, effectively skipping their turn. Fun. So why did it get banned? Featherstorm was released in 2017 as Harpy support that did nothing to actually help the deck. All it did was introduce another Floodgate, and this one doesn't even have an out. It wouldn't do much for a few years since there just wasn't a deck that ended on a Wind-Winged Beast, and the one that didn't even play it because it could search Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. Once Stormwinds was banned, the only relevant deck to play it would be Fluandereeze for a while. It would pop back up in Ryzeal decks as a card you could set off Thrust when going first, and they could just make Castel to make it live, but funny enough, the deck to get it banned was a deck that, as of writing, is terrible. Radiant Typhoon is currently a mid deck, but is about to receive support to make it a real threat, and they can end on a Wind-Winged Beast easily. It would have been very degenerate had nothing been done. Could this card come back?
Hell no!
This is one of, if not the worst design pieces of support ever. How did anyone think this card was a good idea to make? All of the statues have the same effect to stop both players from special summoning monsters other than their attribute. So why'd they get banned? For the third, and hopefully not the last time, the Barrier statues are very old Floodgates that would take years to see competitive success. The first would be Stormwinds. Tri-Brigade could cheat it out with a Simorg link to cheese wins. Simorg would be banned, which allowed Stormwinds to see play again in Fluandereeze. They could search it, then immediately normal it. Then when the opponent tries to normal to get over it, map would trigger and Flu would do the Flu thing. This would get Stormwinds banned in 2023. Inferno and Drought would be next. They never actually saw play, but were instead the second best Floodgates that could be searched off Gallant Granite and Inferno Flame Banshee respectively. And since Mitsurugi got both Protoss and Fossils out of ban, Konami needed to ban these guys too or else they would have been meaningless. Finally, there's Torrent. Torrent was the potential man of the Barrier statues. It saw play in a ton of just okay water decks, but wouldn't be enough of a problem for a ban. Once again, Habakiri would be the one to ban it. It was way worse than the others, but a Floodgate is a Floodgate.